Hey guys, it's Ash. Today I've been working all day testing out all the angels and demons abilities so that I can give you guys the most accurate tier list ranking all the abilities from worst to best. So let's start. There's a total of 12 abilities. So let's start off from the 1-star abilities, the ones that are the worst. So we have Conjuring Chaos from the demon side. This is not a very good ability. What it does is it summons an imp when you defeat an enemy, and you can summon more per demon teammate. Now, unfortunately, the problem with this one is that imp, it's not very good. So it's kind of like a Terra Black Portal Shadow, but the problem here is the imps are very slow and they do very little damage. And in order to spawn one, you need to defeat an enemy first to get that benefit. All of this just makes it a pretty unappealing ability. And the other one is Revengeance in the demon's side as well. Now, what Revengeance does is it sounds very good. Basically, when you're defeated, you deal massive damage to enemies around you. Now, the problem here is it actually doesn't deal a massive amount of damage. It only does about 2,000 damage. But the worst part is that damage can also be avoided. The enemy can dodge it. And in order to get the benefit again, you have to die to get the benefit of this ability. So it's just not that great, unfortunately. And then our other 1-star abilities in the angel side, we have Blessed Barrier. What this one does is by dealing damage on the enemies, you get a shield which gets stronger by dealing more damage. Now, when I first read this, I was like, oh yeah, boy, this is great. This can be great for damage dealers, brawlers that deal a lot of damage, especially from a distance. You can get constant shield from it, right? It sounded great. Unfortunately, after lots of tests, it's actually not that great because the shield is just not that much. You get a very small shield. For your damage, you only get about 25% shield from it. So if you deal like 3,000 damage, you only get like a 750 HP shield, which is very small. And on top of that, that shield decays, kind of like a gust shield. But this one also decays when you have very little shield. So it's a very small benefit, making it a 1-star ability, unfortunately. Next, we have the 2-star abilities. Now, these are better than the 1-star ones. However, they're still a little underwhelming compared to the more powerful abilities that we're going to mention soon. So first, we have Radiant Touch, which is an angelic ability. What it does is basically if you damage enemies, it creates a healing aura, healing more per angel teammate. Now, this sounds great, but overall in solo combat, this is actually really bad. So you want to use it in 3v3. But the other problem with playing it in 3v3 is in order to get the best benefit, that aura is not very big, meaning you have to clump up. You have to group up with your teammates. And a lot of times in 3v3s, obviously you guys know you don't really want to group up. You don't want to hug your teammates because it makes you an easy target, right? So that's a big problem with the Radiant Touch ability. I think it's going to be very good if all your teammates run this in Trio Showdown, for example. I think Trio Showdown is a great game mode to run this one, but overall, not the best. Next, we have in the demon side, Siphon. Now, what Siphon does is by damaging enemies, it creates energy that heals you and your teammates. So it's very much like the Radiant Touch in the angelic side, right? So same thing, you have to deal damage to the enemy to get that energy and heal you and your teammates around, which again, you have to clump up. So overall, both of these are very similar and they're just not overall very strong compared to the other abilities we're going to mention soon. And then we have another one in the demonic side. We have Demon Fire, which leaves behind a trail of fire that damages enemies. Now, this one is interesting. It can be good. It sounds good if you're playing aggressive. It's kind of like a Stu Fire, right? You use Stu, you run around with his super, he leaves a trail of fire. So it's very similar to that. But unfortunately, it doesn't deal a lot of damage. And the other problem is you need to walk over enemies to actually deal the damage, because most of the time you're just going to use it for zoning. Enemies are just going to keep their distance from it. So for most games, you're going to see that it's just not very effective. You're not going to get much benefit out of it. And so it's also a 2-star ability. All right, now we're moving on to the 3-star abilities, guys. These are much better. So starting off, we have Smite in the angelic side. What it does is it fires beams of light that damages and slows enemies. Now, the thing is that beam of light that does damage, it does very little damage. So overall, the damage aspect is not the good part of it. The good part of this ability, guys, is that it slows down enemies. So when you're dealing damage with those beams, any enemy that's caught by the beam is slowed down for a bit. So it's kind of like, think of it as Gale's freezing snow star power. And this is actually really strong in combat with pretty much any brawler. You get close to enemies, especially aggressive brawler, because the beams don't have the greatest range. So if you're playing aggro brawlers, assassins, and tanks, it's gonna come in handy a lot. You're gonna slow down enemies, and that's gonna allow you to approach them, allow you to get near them and take them out. So this is actually a pretty good ability. And the next really good, well, not really good, but very good ability is Seraphim, guys. Seraphim is another angelic ability. What it does is it spawns a healing angelic ally when a teammate is defeated. This ally is stronger if the teammate was an angel. Now, this is a better form of basically Radiant Touch and Siphon. And the reason for that is because you actually spawn a healing unit whenever your teammate dies. And that healing unit has a lot of health, guys. It has 5,000 health and it does nice residual healing. But it's like having an extra unit on the field with a lot of health that the enemy has to take down, because that unit's going to follow you around. So it's also a unit that's hard for the enemies to take down because, you know, it's constantly moving on the map, and it can also be used to like dodge, for example. And this is really good because you get more of them. The more allies that are defeated, the more of these spawning angelic healers that you have. That can be very overpowering in the game if all three of your teammates are running this one, guys. Now we're moving on to the 4-star abilities, guys. On the angelic side, we have Ascension. Now what Ascension does is it grants movement speed, which is increased with each angel teammate. So if you have 2 other angel teammates, you're gonna get a really massive speed boost. I've been playing with this ability with slow brawlers like 8-Bit, and it's so much fun. He's so overpowered with this ability, guys. And pretty much any brawler with speed boost is gonna be very powerful. It's harder for the enemies to deal with. It makes it easier for you to dodge shot. It makes it easier for you to approach them. Speed is always one of the best abilities to have in the game. And that's why in the demonic side, you also have Fury. And what Fury does is by damaging enemies or taking damage, it increases your movement speed as well. So if you're dealing damage on an enemy or if you're taking damage, you're gonna get that speed boost. So both of these speed boost abilities on both angel and demon side are so strong because of that speed benefit. Speed is always something you want, essential in all Brawl Stars game modes. And finally, we have the 5-star abilities. These are the most overpowered abilities, starting off with Gluttony in the demon side. What Gluttony does is you spawn a power cube when you defeat an enemy. And what makes this so overpowered is that if you have all 3 teammates running this Gluttony ability, guess what? Every time you kill an opposing enemy, everyone gets a power cube. And the more power cubes you get, the more stronger you're gonna get. It's like having a Ruffs boost every time you kill an enemy. And basically that makes your team so overpowered that it's gonna be so hard for the enemy to stop you. And then on the angelic side, we have the best overall ability out of all 12 abilities, guys. This is the most broken one, and it is called Rebirth. What it does is instead of being defeated, you knock back enemies and you become invulnerable for a short time. This is just nuts. It's crazy because what it does is you just can't die. It's like having a last stand Draco gadget. Do you guys remember Honeycomb back in the days when B had it? You can't die. You leave at 1 health. But on top of that, not just that, you also get a knockback. So you knock back the enemy as well, which is just ridiculously overpowered. By hands down, the best ability out of all of them. And if you're running this, if all 3 of your teammates are running Rebirth, oh my goodness, it's gonna be so hard for the enemy to deal with. So there you guys have it, the complete tier list for the angels and demons. So if you're wondering which is better, angels or demons, in my opinion, you gotta go with angels. Angels have overall better abilities. You've got Rebirth, of course, the most broken one. That's just one reason, well, probably the most important reason to go with angels. And then you have, of course, Ascension, you have Smite, Seraphim. You have a bunch of them that are just really strong on the angel side. So if I were you guys, I'd pick angels. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Look forward to more awesome Brawl Stars strategy content, and I'll see you guys again soon.